There you go. So hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Mike Bevilacqua. I'm a nephrologist over here at Surrey. And I'm really happy to have you all here for our session today. And today, I love this title. Our session is Nourishing Your Kidneys, Patient and Dietitian Partnerships. Just fantastic. Um, so this, we should almost change the top line. I was going to say that it says it's a new way for us to connect, but we've been doing this for, about a year and a half now, where we've been hosting these webinars. This is just one in a series. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're returning, again, welcome back. We have been doing quite a few of these about every month to date. And just as a reminder that all of this goes online on our website, which is put here on the screen. So this includes today's session. It will go up usually about a week or two. It'll be up there on the website, but we also have all the previous ones as well. So if you missed one and you want to go look at it, great. If you want to hear more or repeat some of the stuff you hear today, again, great, and go look at that online. And the other part that's on there are our little button that says subscribe now. That's our little plug that actually, if you go onto this website and click there, you'll get a reminder every time one of these sessions comes up, so you can be sure to catch it in real time. Before we get started, I think it's always a good idea for us to reflect on where we are in the province. Even though we're in a virtual setting, we're all in our various different areas. I'm over here in Surrey, and I'm happy to say that I'm from the beautiful traditional and unceded territory of the Katzie, Semiahmoo, Kwantlen, and some other Coast Salish peoples. And I think it's worthwhile for everybody as we're meeting to take a moment to reflect on which part of this great province they're coming from as well. Oops. So a bit of housekeeping before we get into the content, just so you know how this all works. So you can see and hear us, but very intentionally, we can't see and hear you. That's for the recording purposes and for some privacy considerations, of course. But even though we can't see you or hear you, we still want to have your questions. And the way we do that is there's a little question and answer box on your Zoom there that you can put questions on. Very specifically, you'll see two items. There's one that's chat and one that's Q&A. The Q&A is the one with the two little speech bubbles. That's where we want you to put the questions, not in the chat bar, but in that Q&A bar. As they come through, we'll be collecting them. Some of them I might respond right there in the Q&A box. Others will probably hold. And then when there's kind of a break in the presentation, we'll address them. So if it doesn't get addressed right away, don't worry about it. We will take it just when there's kind of a natural point in the presentation to do that. I definitely encourage your questions. Some of the questions, if they're a little bit too individual or particular, we'll try to change that into something that's a little bit more general. In other words, we can't answer very, very specific one-on-one individual medical questions here. That's best addressed with your kidney team and with your own dietitian. But if it's something we can spin into a general question that probably a lot of people want to know, then definitely we'll do that. As always, all of the conversation and question here isn't to replace the conversations you have with your own dietitian or your own kidney team, but rather just actually to give you a little bit more information to go into those better prepared. And then you can have questions to bring to your own team. Again, we kind of mentioned this a little bit here where we've, oh, there's already questions coming in. We will get to things there. So yeah, fantastic. I love the enthusiasm. As mentioned, you can register online for these sessions and more will pop up, and that's great. And then at the end, since you've all registered by email, you'll get an email for a little feedback form, a little evaluation form. We'd love to hear whatever you have to say about the presentation so we can make these even better and better as time goes on. Otherwise, the session we have today. So again, I love both of these, the tagline and the purpose here, where it's really about getting practical tips and choosing dietary choices while living with kidney disease. And I love that tagline of putting the joy back in eating. That's a really, really great message. This session actually is one that came out of some of that feedback, right? I can honestly say the first time we've done this is our second iteration of it. It was a patient suggested topic of people who just wanted to hear more and more about this. So I'm so happy that we can deliver this. And you can see that our goal here is to put the joy back. And I love that message. I'm so happy with the group of presenters that we have here today. We have Danny, who's a dietitian at St. Paul's Hospital and actually the head of our provincial kidney dietitian group. She's done the session before and we're in for a real treat to have her here today. And then we also have two people. We have Dawn and Tamara, two of our patient partners who are going to share their personal and lived experience with this as well. So again, a great group, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing. Ooh. So with that, I will stop my share. Click too many buttons there and turn it over to Danny.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's such a pleasure to be part of this wonderful BC Renal community and to be here with two of my dear patient partners and friends. It's been a lot of work putting this together, and I hope you will find it as worthwhile of an experience as we did collaborating. So as Mike alluded to, the goal of our conversation is really to give you a bit of an introduction about kidney disease and nutrition and just really overall health management, and really acknowledge that new diagnosis piece and what that means in terms of the patient experience. Don will start off sharing his story, and Tamara will follow with her story after I present a little bit about nutrition. Then after the stories, we'll go back to some nutrition concepts and hopefully have a chance to answer some of the great questions that are already coming in. I really want to say that, nutrition is a really holistic topic. And that's why it's so important to make sure that we consider the emotional as well as the clinical piece. So I hope that I've been respectful to that. I know my patient partners have been very helpful to me in putting this together. So as a new diagnosis, what I understand as a healthcare provider is that patients feel many things. They are bombarded with medical jargon. They look at their lab results and only see flags and red numbers, so everything's in the abnormal range. You as the patient are meeting many new providers, and each of them seem to have an opinion about what you should and shouldn't eat. So overall, you're getting this abundance of information and the messaging is mixed, which leaves most patients feeling overwhelmed, disjointed, and quite frankly, frustrated. So patients, including my partners, describe hearing of their new diagnosis as a real shock. It's like being trapped in a tunnel without knowing if you're ever going to get out. You've been diagnosed with a condition that's not going to go away. It's something you'll have to live with every single day. So how could you possibly find your way out? It feels lonely, it feels isolating, and the COVID pandemic has certainly exacerbated these emotions. However, I hope that after hearing our sides of the story, you can get some knowledge, find some time to reflect on what you've learned, and embrace some learning yourself. To really ask yourself, what is my goal in my health? And how do I want to be cared for? How do I want to care for myself? And what really matters to me today in this moment? And becoming that advocate you deserve to be for yourself so that you can have the best health outcomes possible. So here you are, new to a diagnosis of chronic kidney disease, and you're meeting new people on your team on a regular basis. One of them will be probably me or someone that's like me, a dietitian. And you might think to yourself, oh dear, here's the food police telling me I can't have my favorite foods anymore, writing prescriptions down in big, bright red on a prescription pad, telling me to get fit, change my diet, change, putting this pressure on me. And I really, really hope that's not the impression that we make on you when we either call you or speak to you over Zoom, or hopefully see you in person if the clinic allows. I hope instead that when you talk to us, we can be a supportive listener to you. We can help you to explore your goals, what's important to you in your lifestyle, what matters to you culturally and in your environment. What are some important things for you when you look at your health and your nutrition? to really be the source of trusted information. And I will say the patients I work with feel that trust, and that makes my job so rewarding and so joyful, actually, because people really feel they can call me if they have questions. I really hope that dietitians like myself are respectful to your individual needs, and that really comes across for you, and that we're there to answer your questions in a timely way. Especially during the pandemic, it's sometimes hard to get in touch with various providers. So even if we can't answer your question, if it's out of our scope, hopefully we can give you some tips and hacks and expedited guidance so you can get your question sorted more quickly. So some of you might have a new diagnosis and you want to know, where do I start? How, do I get access to a trusted source of health and nutrition information? Do I have that right now? Do I even know what my labs mean, my blood work results? Do I understand why I have to take the medications I'm taking? Do I know that because I have maybe one or more than one health condition, how that jives together in terms of my health management? And what tools do I need today at this moment to help manage my new diagnosis? You could insert, health in general, because these questions are important to check in with about on a regular basis, even if you've had kidney disease for some time or other health conditions. What we really hope, when we do this type of work, like we're doing today, is that you walk away thinking about, what steps can I take to manage my health better? If I hear from a provider that I need to eat less salt, what does that look like? And how does that look like for me on a day-to-day basis? What supports do I need to make eating less salt a reality? Do I need recipes? Do I need label reading information? Do I need to have a blood pressure cuff at home so I can take my blood pressure? There's all these aspects, that are important when you're trying to achieve something and get confidence in managing your health. So I guess the quote is about us, all of us, really understanding that we can't decide what's in our future, but we can make a decision about the habits that we have. And these habits can help decide the wave of the future. With that, I will hand over to Don. And Don is a wonderful resource and a great patient partner. He's got a fascinating story to tell, and I'm really looking forward to us sharing his story and learning from it. Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you, Danny. Well, I'm kind of a newbie as a person with chronic kidney disease, a disease for which there is no cure, but for which there is life. Let me just set the scene. It's a little over a year ago. It's early fall of 2020. I'm starting to have kind of discomfort in my chest. I take a cab faster. I live very close to St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver. And the doctors and other medical personnel are lined up in front of St. Paul's in the fading light, and there's people across the street cheering them. And I'm going in thinking I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm admitted to the hospital, need an angiogram. I had 2 angiograms and angioplasties 10 years ago. What these are threading through the arteries in my arm into the actual arteries of my heart, looking at them. Contrast dyes are there. The doctor says, you cannot be stented. The next step is opening your chest and doing a bypass. This is a major operation. It's been around for many years, and it has a very high success rate. So this is not happy news, but at least there's a solution. My father died when I was 15 of a heart attack. Now there are things that could have saved him then and could save me. So there are tests leading up to this. And during one of those tests, out of the blue, I'm told by my cardiologist, you have stage 4 kidney disease. Stage 5 is dialysis, waiting for a kidney transplant. I don't have diabetes. I guess that's one good thing. But this over the next weeks and a few months was disorienting and very frightening. High levels of anxiety and panic. I dealt with that by talking to my GP, Nick Graham, which I have a very good relationship with over the 4 or 5 years I've been with him. And he prescribes a very low dose of an anti-anxiety drug, which has worked and has been essential here. I'm glad I did it because it's allowed me to think my way through here rationally and with access to my own emotional reactions without being overwhelmed by them. So the first thing I get is an online discussion with a nephrologist. This is done with hour-long interviews on the phone, blood tests, etc. I get a 4-page, my doctors get a 4-page result. It doesn't look good. I'm given a link to the clue, the kind of thing you can do for this. Watching your salt and your potassium, vegetables. I'm a big vegetable eater, small amounts of lean meat. Hey, I went through the Healthy Heart program, but there it is. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, carrots, coconut, corn, these are bad. Mushrooms, that's okay, I don't like mushrooms. Parsnips, peas, peppers, potatoes, tomatoes. I know what this is. To save my life, I know what I have to do. I have to cook worse than hospital food for the rest of my life. And I don't like it, and it's even more unhappy meaning. But okay. I also noticed that salt levels are very high in my labs, and they cause high blood pressure. And it turns out that untreated blood pressure that I had until up to a few years ago, about 10 years ago, probably did a lot of damage to my kidneys. And there's something you can do even before you get into the kidney clinic, which is to read your labels, which I never did except for fat. So, vegetables, lots of it. What do you do to make them tasty? You use sauces. What do you do to make lean meat tasty? Sauces, lots of them. They're delicious. Teriyaki sauce. I do a good teriyaki sauce. So 1 tablespoon. Oh, right. That's another thing I have to learn. What is a tablespoon? Well, actually, it's actually the same size as regular tablespoons, but it's really small because I used to put 4, 5, 6, 7 tablespoons in. But what is 1 tablespoon of teriyaki sauce? It's 25% of your daily usage of salt. I probably was eating enough salt for a day and a half in 1 serving of teriyaki. How about tomato sauce? How can you live without tomato sauce? I'd like to know. Well, I'm learning, sort of. A half a cup. And as you learn, half a cup. What is half a cup? Well, I'll tell you what, it's not a cup. It's half a cup. And I always thought half a cup was a cup, but it isn't. It's very much smaller. And this is the universal measurement, plus your own palm. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, what's 1/2 cup of tomato sauce? For sodium, it's 12%. How much tomato sauce would you use with some spaghetti? Probably a cup. That's 24%, a quarter. I should say I'm virtuous. I never use this stuff. I only use sauces. Hoisin sauce, Chinese sauce. You can get them at Safeway. You don't have to go to Chinatown or anything. Lovely sauces. Let these soy sauce stand for all the rest of them. They really are tasty. They're full of sugar and full of salt, and you just barely can taste them. How about tuna? I actually like tuna. What is tuna? Well, let's see. A quarter of a cup is worth 8% of sodium. Well, that's sort of okay. What about haricots? romaine beans. Okay, half a cup. What's that? Well, it's 25% of fiber, but it's only 5% of sodium. But there's another problem. There's a lot of potassium in this too. In fact, these kinds of things, beans, chickpeas, which I've often used with meat and chicken and fish, and black beans, garlic, and beef, you've got to watch it. You're going to load up on potassium. Salmon, gosh, everyone likes salmon. Tuna or salmon. And again, sodium fairly high in the canned stuff. What this has led me to is, well, the kidney clinic, where I was assured that no, I didn't have to write even lousier than hospital food to bring my diet in such a way that I would have nutritious food. It can be tasty food. And taste now is, what are you going to do when you're not using salt, which you can lower now before you get to a kidney clinic. And for me, it's been heat, spices, chilies, and to use them more consistently. Spices, dried and fresh, I've used them before, but now to use them more consistently. And various vinegars, balsamic, apple cider, there are a lot of them around. And to use them consistently and to measure and to be careful. Now that's a lot about food, and there's more things to come. There's exercise and there's knowing your medication, etc. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about it as a newbie. And here's something else that's happened, is that yesterday I got some new labs, and it's working for me. Now, some of these terms, labs, proteinuria. Of course, medicine would come up and take a very nice word like protein and call it proteinuria. And my biology and chemistry classes I last took were in grade 12. Proteinuria sounds like one of those things that might invade your veins if you drank dirty water. Well, it isn't. It's too much protein, especially animal or legume protein in your body. You can still eat it. In fact, you can still have teriyaki sauce if you want to use 1 tablespoon and have 25% of your salt taken up with 1 tablespoon. So I'm still in the middle, maybe not at the beginning of the middle, but I'm moving on in such a way that I am eating in ways that I'm enjoying. I was never a great cook. I was a mediocre cook, but I was cooking and I had to. I was living on my own. And you learn to do, I learned to do 5, 6 things, and then you have variations. Okay, put broccoli in instead of Brussels sprouts. Put some chicken instead of some lean beef cut up. You can do that. What this has opened up to me is making cooking a little more interesting, a little more exciting, and just as tasty. You can't fool yourself about taste. Oh, this is really good. No. I've learned to eat other things, good for you, but it tastes like, worse than hospital food. I found a number of things. I don't know, did a group of mushrooms attack me when I was 3 or something? The thought of mushrooms, just looking at them. I've turned food back in restaurants that had a few mushrooms in the sauce. I'm not going to eat them. And I thought, well, mushrooms have low potassium in it. Just try, slice one up, fried it in a bit of olive oil, and guess what? It actually tasted good. You know what I didn't like when I was 3 is not a particularly good for what a good guide for what I can eat at 77, which is something else I'd like to talk about. People say to me, Don, you look so young, you don't look like 77. Yeah, I have 80% block. And I'll tell you another thing, I'm taking a healthy heart program, doing some exercise at home through the internet. And the two of them fit together very nicely. If I had diabetes, I'd be dealing with that too. more. But they do fit together. And there's a problem sometimes. Some of the food that really is good for a healthy heart diet, like a lot of Brussels sprouts, which I like and don't cook like my mother cooked. You know, you cook it so that it's still kind of crispy. Can't eat all that much at one sitting. One of the things I've adjusted to is smaller portions and smaller meals. I grew up, Mom cooked the meals. The plate was there, it was love. You finished it. I was an only kid. I've got friends who were in 4 or 5 families with 4 or 5 kids. And you finished it and you piled up high before your older brother got more than you did. So there's a way in which this is all embedded in the way you grew up eating, and the comfort food and meaning, and my taste in expensive French pastries, layers, butter, pastry, the Bon Ton, Brecca, 1 block away from where I live. You know, okay, you can have them, but they're a treat, not every other day. So it's an adjustment. But you know, I'm older. Some of those 17 minor irritations of life that are still there, they seem less important. Some of the more major ones, well, I've dealt with them. Mom, dad, everything else, you know, this drill. They're better, and the food is better. And I'll tell you, I'm glad that those first 3 months are now over. I wouldn't want to do them again. And for those of you who are starting, one of the things you need to do is have some patience and understand that this stuff works. I think that's something to keep in mind. It takes a lot out of you. It takes a concentration out of you. It can make you snippy and nasty to yourself and to others. Be kind to yourself. Self-manages is what this is all about. And I'm learning to do that. And it's an ongoing process that requires adjustment to changing circumstances. In other words, it's just like life itself in some ways. Here's an added feature or an expanded feature. And I think I'd like to say to people who are listening, this is the middle of January and COVID is still around us. So people listening to this 6 months or a year from now, for the first time diagnosis, it's not good news. It definitely isn't good news. I'd prefer not to be in this situation. But in this situation, I'm very glad I'm being taken care of. By the kidney clinic at St. Paul's and the Healthy Heart Clinic, and that I do have a general practitioner that I like. And if you don't have one, sometimes it's hard to get one. You really need one to talk to, and sometimes to explain the labs to you, to explain a lot of things to you, to vent a little more. It's hard to vent with specialists. They're so austere. The specialist dietitians are not nice. Austere, I'll say that. But it is good to have a GP you can actually talk about. So there are obviously many more details. And if you ask me 6 months from now, I'll tell you. So I think, you know, heart, courage, self-kindness, self-care, and some patience with getting there. And I'm certainly not perfect in this, and but I'm very much glad I'm still alive, I can assure you, and glad I made some new friends. Okay, that's all I want to say. So back to Danny.
Thank you so much, Don. You just basically covered so much ground and you're getting so many nice comments about what a great patient partner you are. And I agree with them there. The crowd is happy with you. So that's nice. Okay, so Don talked about a lot of things, and I'm going to bring them back into some clinical context just really quickly, because It's just as hard to hear the information as it is to give it out. And so when you get your diagnosis and you're presented with this kind of language like autoimmune disease, polycystic kidney disease, you have, diabetic nephropathy or hypertensive nephrosclerosis. It sounds so terrifying. And really, if you're in the kidney clinic, it's because your kidneys are not functioning well and you are at risk for having your kidney function go down. So you're always living with that anxiety, and you're waking up every day going, well, I feel great. I don't feel like I'm sick, but I don't know what my kidneys are doing. And I have to wait a whole month to find out. It's quite terrifying. And my patient partners and patients in general always, they would just want to know their lab results and want to know what I think of them in terms of interpretation. Having said all this, having said, some of our patients have proteinuria, some of you have a lower GFR. As Dawn mentioned, this can be slowed down. We know that if you take care of your health, you can slow all this down. There's evidence left, right, and center around that. That's why kidney clinics exist, so that we can help you. So there is a lot of sadness in getting that news, but there is also opportunity. The opportunity also arises that you look at food not just about, specific amounts of each food item, but that you look at food the way Dawn was describing, much more holistically. What's your day-to-day like? Do you get up, do your little walk and stop at Brecca on your way home? What are your patterns? Start just looking at your patterns. Is your mom's voice always ringing in your head when you plate your food that you have to finish everything on it? Were you brought up that if you didn't eat meat, you were going to, run into health problems or deficiencies? Were there food rituals in your life? And just ask yourself whether those still serve you, or whether it's time to look at things maybe from a different lens, with a new perspective, and maybe try some new recipes. Maybe try some of your comfort foods that you grew up with that served you well. Share a meal with others. I know a patient of mine has every Sunday a meal with friends on Zoom. They cook together and they sit in front of the camera and they share a meal. Let COVID not stop you to do some of the things that bring you joy, and just be creative about that. And if you can't be creative, ask for help. That's what dietitians are here for. And so what does managing nutrition really look like? Some of these images are here to show you, really in the COVID era, most of us might be eating on our own. So taking the time, like this image is showing of the gentleman putting together a meal that is maybe simple to put together, but really speaks to him from his childhood, evokes memories, has flavors that are new or flavors that he's comfortable with. Dawn was saying he loves his food spicy. Nothing wrong with spicing up your food. Tamara will also talk about some great tips she has around creating more flavor in food. When you're grocery shopping or meal preparing with others, if you have others that you live with in your household, bring them in to the label reading, bring them into the grocery list or meal planning, so that you have the support you need. This is not a one person show, right? No person is an island here. We all need a community to help us get through it. And the kidney community is a beautiful community to be a part of. So looking at ways to engage with others around that and whatever feels safe for you is important. Don was talking about his relationship with his primary care provider, so his family doctor. I think that's a really important one. So in this image, there's a gentleman at home taking his blood pressure and checking in with his doctor about the results. Monitoring is something you're going to be doing more at home, but reporting back to your team, maybe sharing your blood sugar trends with your dietitian if you have diabetes, and if that's a goal for you, is something that you can start thinking about. All in all, what these images are to evoke is that you're learning. You're learning about yourself, your body, and your unique and individual needs, because everyone's going to be different. We're all living with kidney disease, but we're all different in that way as well, in that regard. And how you use your learning to adapt is really what resilience is all about. And that's really where the confidence comes from. And the self-management that Don was talking about, where he was maybe a year and a half ago. And please know that Don and I have never actually met in person. All we've had is Zoom. How is this person able to take charge of their health in this way? It's just such an exciting thing to have seen happen over the last year and a half. And there's so many factors that, Don and Tamara and the rest of you are weighing every day. And so it's pretty incredible how strong we are and how we can navigate. So going specifically into Don's point about sodium, I think he's spot on. If you walk away with one thing today that you want to tackle, even before anything else, it's salt, because every single one of us eats more than we need to, has more than their share. So it's really important to take sodium a bit more seriously, and label reading can help with that. But meal preparation at home helps even more because you have control over amounts. CKD, or chronic kidney disease, is silent, and so is high blood pressure. People don't feel sick. People don't feel any symptoms. It's not like anything obvious. You might feel really well, but you have high blood pressure and you have chronic kidney disease. So we can't really see whether lowering your salt is going to actually show up in your blood work as serum sodium. But we do know that if you lower salt in your diet, you can slow down the protein in your urine and help protect your blood vessels so that you have better circulation around your organs. So it protects your heart health, your kidney health, and it really just helps with the health of your blood vessels. The goal that we have is, you're going to laugh, 2,300 milligrams per day. So that's really a teaspoon. And if you don't salt your food, you're getting lots of natural sodium or salt in other things. So when Don was showing us the sauces that he likes to use, starting to measure them out is a really good way to understand how much salt is going into your food. If you want a quick cheat sheet on how to read a food label for salt, just aim for less than 10% per serving. So if I have a piece of bread, one piece of bread, that's one serving based on the nutrition label on the package. So you just have to make sure that the label serving size is how much you actually plan to eat. And you need to double it or divide it by 2, do a little bit of math, depending on how much you plan to eat of the food. So it's not really about, I can't ever eat this food. It's about understanding portions. Salt is often hiding. And I think for Dawn, it was hiding in the sauces. For some of us, it might be hiding in processed food or restaurant food. And so just being aware that you can't really taste salt in some of the processed food that's out there. So deli meats are one of them, one example. Commercial soups, sauces, dressings, condiments. These are all examples. But there are other foods like even simple crackers or sandwich breads, things you wouldn't expect that have a high sodium content. And remember that beautiful high quality Himalayan salt that is sold in public markets now, that is supposed to be natural, is still going to convert to sodium levels in your body. So it's still going to raise your blood pressure. Here's a nice example of a breakfast makeover that we adapted from Hypertension Canada. And I'd like to thank Yvonne McIntosh, my colleague, who's also a dietitian, for creating this slide. I like this because, when you get up in the morning, sometimes you might be in a rush, or you like to buy bran muffins because they're really high in fiber. For whatever reason, our breakfast was a bran muffin with butter and flavored coffee, which came to about 1,200 milligrams of sodium already, almost half what we're allowed in the day. And then if you take that and you make it over, I guess, to switch to whole grain bread, peanut butter, fruit, and just a plain coffee with milk, you reduce your sodium down to 408 milligrams. So it's not that you can't eat a bran muffin. It's that it's got 800 milligrams of sodium, and maybe you want to go for it and adjust your sodium intake for the rest of the day, exactly as Dawn was mentioning. And now to my second expert, Tamara, who will share her story.
Thank you. Just gonna share my screen here. Okay. Thanks, Danny, and thanks, Dawn. I love your story, and I love your approach to everything. Just so, I don't know. It's been a while since my first kidney care clinic and the beginning of my experience, as I'll explain, but I don't know if I dove in as quickly as you did, and I wish I had. So with that, I will begin my nutritional journey. Welcome from the warm lands, home to Cowichan tribes in Coast Salish territory. I've been a kidney care patient since 2015. They actually identified decreased function in 2014. And I didn't know at that time, in stage 3, I didn't know that I had kidney disease. They didn't label it as such at the time. And I didn't know how serious things were until the summer of 2015, when my GFR went to 21. And I was terrified. I was very scared, and all this information was very overwhelming as to what it meant. But by then I had a clear idea that something was wrong. So they had started the blood work in 2014, and I was very keen on monitoring my own results. So I would always look at my labs after my blood work and see all these big A's, these abnormals, and wonder what the heck does all this mean. And it was really, it's really scary when you're just starting out. And to this day, I do monitor my labs. I don't know everybody in the audience today, but for other patients, I don't know if you monitor your labs as well, but I'm, the day I get my blood work, I'm constantly hitting that refresh button, and I say, oh, yay, okay, I can do another month, yay. So I had a biopsy in that first fall of stage 4. I've been in stage 4 since 2015 and remain in stage 4. So I'm thankful for that. Very thankful for staying stable for the most part. I had a biopsy, showed scarring on my kidneys. Of course, that's not reversible. They suspect that it was from an undetected strep bacteria that I might have had. And the prognosis, of course, was, it's not going to ever be normal again. And I said, okay, well, what happens from here? I had thought, okay, well, tell me what to do and I'll make it normal again. Well, that wasn't going to happen. So they said it would probably progress to the end stage within a couple of years or a few years at the rate it was going. So thank goodness that hasn't happened yet. But because of that, everything was moving so quickly. And, I got assigned this kidney care team, and it was scary, but on the other hand, I thought, well, that's pretty cool. You get a kidney doctor, the nephrologist, I never knew that word before, and a social worker and a nurse and a dietitian. And I thought, wow, most people I know would love to have a dietitian. This is kind of amazing. Okay, let's run with this a little bit. And there was some other good news. I didn't have protein in my urine yet when we started out. I do now. That's just part of the progression. And I wasn't on any medication, and I'm still not on any medication. So I'm really thankful for that as well. But because things were progressing, I had my pre-transplant appointment at St. Paul's. My weight has always fluctuated, and the surgeon told me to decrease my girth. And I did. It took some time, but I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to get a transplant, I want to go into that with, the best physical and mental health that I can. So that's kind of where changes began. And the other thing, of course, that they said was lower your sodium and protein, change what you eat. And I wasn't super into cooking back then. And I thought, wow, this is a lot to take in and a lot to do, a lot ahead of me. They also said one thing, CKD, they said you have CKD, chronic kidney disease. And they said you can also look at it as CKD being cardio, kidney, and diabetes. And I thought, well, why? And, you know, they talked about how those can often be interrelated, not always, but that they can be. And just to be aware of that, you know, going forward, and that it really mattered what I did next. So first of all, I started lamenting foods, you know, and the limiting beliefs that go with it, thinking the window of possibilities closing, and it's no longer going to taste good, and well, what's the point of cooking? And you just feel, well, I just felt really limited. I thought I can't drink wine anymore, or go on any travel adventures, which often centered around, you know, cultural and culinary experiences, and that I couldn't dine out anymore with other people. And I just thought, well, geez, this is just changing my identity. I'm a foodie. Like, don't they know I'm a foodie? So I listened, though. They said lower your protein, and so I went extreme. That's all I heard. Lower your protein. So I went vegan. I thought, this means don't eat meat. So I ate as little as protein as possible. Of course, you still need protein in your diet. I didn't eat enough vegetables. For somebody who went vegan, I ate the same vegetables all the time, so I got the same nutrients all the time. And I relied on all those filler foods, the bread, the buns, the pasta, and the fries. And I ate imitation meat, which of course is processed, refined grains. I had sugar cravings as a result of some of these choices, and I was indulging in candy and sweets. So guess what happened? Instead of eating what would be a nice vegan meal like this, I was eating this one over here. And that was probably worse than what I was doing before. And what happened? Well, I gained weight. I didn't feel well. My potassium went high for the first time. And then I heard, you know, they told me that was something I needed to be cautious of. And I thought, well, why? I didn't know. So I started to learn about foods that are higher in potassium, and learned that, you know, when I'm having those, I can still enjoy them in smaller amounts, but that I'm aware, like Danny said with the sodium, I'm aware of my potassium intake for the rest of the day, or even for the, you know, a couple days. If I have, you know, maybe a half a banana in the smoothie, I probably won't have another banana most of the week, I would say. But it's going to be different for everyone. And they were my dietitian here on the island, she's amazing. I actually have two, and they're both amazing, and they were super helpful with this whole learning process. And one thing I learned recently is that Health Canada is making it so the amount of potassium will soon have to be included on the label, just in a bit of a transition year right now, but by next year, that's going to be the norm. But I also learned that all potassium isn't created equal. So it doesn't mean that just because you eat this much potassium, it's going to raise your levels in your blood. That would be too easy. So Danny's going to explain more about that later on in the presentation. So foodie stuff and groceries, as I said, I'm a bit of a foodie. I love food and I love grocery shopping, but I didn't always love cooking or shopping. I just do now. Over the years, I learned to make choices based on reading the labels to determine if something was higher in sodium or potassium. And then later on, I learned about phosphate and phosphorus. I'm still learning about that. I don't know all the time what foods contain that. So I'm really careful what others tell me as well. I've had some well-intentioned friends that you should eat pomegranate every day. And I'm like, no, like what's good for me might not be good for you. What's good for you might not be good for me. There's a very popular Chipotle black bean burger that everyone's like, you should have this. Well, it's got 29% sodium and 13% potassium. So for me, that's not the burger for me. And there's a lot of popular soups as well. I know my parents used to eat a lot of soups. One was as high as 36% sodium. And I was like, wow. So these are things I had no idea back then that I know now. That's not to say that I vilify any certain foods or brands, but I do seek out like good, better, and best choices. Do I always make the best one? No, but those are the things I try to look at when I am making my choices. So I haven't done things perfectly. I do keep trying. My weight has always fluctuated, like I said. My cholesterol levels are higher than normal, including the bad one, LDL. So I talked to my dietitian about fats, and she emailed me some resources and some guides and tips. Another time that I talked to the dietitian about food, and this is outside of my kidney care clinic. Like they literally say, call anytime you have a question, and I have. And I would have an email within the next day. Was when I was looking at, the other time I called was when I was looking at how much protein to eat. So got some good resources there and some good ways to kind of measure without measuring. And that was super helpful for me. Nutrition is super important, and it's more important to me now than it's ever been. And holistic nutrition means nourishing in other ways as well. Just wanted to mention that because for me, that also means reducing stress and mindful movement, sleep and rest, meditation, nature, yoga, sports, what have you, hiking, spending time with people you care about, all kinds of things, I think help with my holistic nutrition. So with that, in 2019, I decided to properly study nutrition. I wanted to learn more about food and how it affected my health. I want to know like what nutrients are in foods and how does it affect my gut health, and how does it affect inflammation? We hear about inflammation a lot these days. And I also want to know where food came from and how it's harvested and how it impacts my digestion. I also have ulcerative colitis, so that was another part of it. And I wanted to know how did it impact blood pressure and weight? I knew that it did, but I wanted to know more of the how. So yeah, I studied holistic nutrition. 2019, I got my diploma in natural nutrition, and I started making my own kidney-friendly recipes. I made some mistakes along the way. I tried to make a chocolate recipe, and it turned out it had a ton of potassium and phosphate in it, and I didn't know. And I used an app, and the app was wrong. So when in doubt, even not when in doubt, always check with a trusted resource. I grew some herbs last year, just a little bit, and this year I plan to have my first garden. So just starting to prepare for that. No idea how, but I'm gonna find out. But herbs, I think, are so underrated, and I use them every day, every single day, in some form, whether they're fresh or dried or powdered. I'm just careful that they're not part of a blend that has sodium, like a lot of sodium in it. So I use fresh herbs. These are my top 10 favorites there. I won't read them all out. I'm sure some of them will stand out to some people and some to others. And mint is something that I love putting in everything. I do a lot of Indian cooking and it fits in there, and it also works well in a smoothie. So one of my favorites. And then my top 10 fiber favorites, and they are dietitian approved. Like I said, check your sources. So I checked on these, and these are some of my very favorite things. And as you can see there's a lot of variety and a lot of flavorful foods. Life is not over because I have to lower my sodium or my protein. Gut health, I think people are hearing more and more about gut health lately. Like I said, I have had ulcerative colitis. That was diagnosed in 2016. So just a year after my kidney diagnosis, I'm like, what is happening? I'm falling apart. So I made it a priority to learn a little bit about gut health and the importance of a healthy gut bacteria. Danny's going to talk to that a little bit later. Good eating for me then means a lot of fiber and variety. I was eating all vegetables before. Now the variety means I'm also getting a variety of nutrients. I'm getting more vitamins and minerals, not the same ones every single time. I don't food prep the exact same meal for 5 days in a row. Just to me, I can't. Like, I can't get bored with stuff. I need to be creative, and as you can see, I get excited about food. One great addition to my diet in the last few years has been fermented foods. I love sauerkraut and kimchi. I make my own, but if I was to buy it, it would be from the refrigerated section, so you get that good bacteria. Apple cider vinegar, probiotic yogurt, water kefir. Some people enjoy dairy kefir. Kombucha. Just have to be really careful. I'm careful on which kombucha I choose, because some have a lot of sugar in them, and I also have made my own kombucha as well. So these are my little tiny tips. If I can offer anything, the herbs was the one thing, herbs and spices, but fresh or frozen fruits and veggies. I used to think that they weren't good for you. And then I learned that they're harvested at their best. They're affordable, they're available. It's something you can always find. So good to have on hand. When I dine out, I look at the menu ahead of time. A lot of the time I want to know what the best choices are before I go there. And I'm also not afraid to ask how something is prepared. Obviously I'm not going to say, well, did you put how much salt you put? But I just, in general, I ask them, is that made in butter? Is that made in salt? Is that made in oil? And I also am not afraid to request that they don't add extra salt. So there's one dish that I know that I get at one restaurant when I go. It's kind of my standard dish. And every time I ask them, please do not top up the salt, because they always put a whole bunch after, right before they serve it. So at home, I involve my partner. He actually gets excited when he cooks for us, and he will literally, he was looking through a book last weekend, and he's like, can you have this? Can you have this? And I just thought, wow, this is really cool. It's something that we do together. Cooking is something we do together. And I think he actually likes when I say no, because it's a challenge to him. He likes to refer to the black box that they get on Chopped and stuff, and he likes to improvise and substitute and make his own recipes. So it's kind of a fun thing that we do. So nothing is as yummy, but has a sweet taste of success. So, doing a lot of these measures, I have had some really good labs with minimal A's, those glaring abnormals, aside from my kidney, direct kidney stuff, creatinine and urea. But even that has decreased. I was feeling good, looking good, lost weight, sleeping well. That is actually me about, not last summer, but the one before. And that, to picture to me, is when I was feeling really, really good. But things change, and they do. And that's okay. It sucks, but it's okay. Setbacks happen. I got really sick in the fall of 2019 when I was on vacation in Italy. In hindsight, I wonder what was it. Anyways, it was an unknown virus, and it impacted my kidneys, and they went into the teens, and that freaked me out. But they came back up when I got better. COVID, of course, has been a big challenge. It's a new era of isolation, and that's really tough when you kind of already feel isolated in some ways with your illness, or I shouldn't say you, me. So I feel sometimes, and then grief can also be very debilitating. A bit of a grief sandwich in a way, I guess. I had my mom passed just before COVID, and then the COVID era has happened, and we're still in it. And my dad passed as well, including his kidneys failing. He had a number of issues, but that was one thing. So that was kind of hard to see kidney disease from that standpoint as well. In that time of caring for my dad, I discovered DoorDash, and I was back and forth from the mainland and island. I live on the island, and I wasn't cooking a lot. I lost my dad, and then I lost some of my health as well. So some results of that nutrition change was weight gain, increased blood pressure for the first time, And some of my labs were going all wonky, and my iron and some of the vitamin levels, cholesterol, my sleep was affected. My skin looked like pale. My hair is dry. I was experiencing swelling and some itching as well. So things can change. Things can change, and then I'm learning to adjust. So my potassium is consistently normal now. It never runs high anymore. So my focus now is on my blood pressure. So yeah, what was my focus a few years ago is different now. And so I have to be really conscious to exercise and monitor my blood pressure at home, because with COVID, we're doing a lot more of our clinics at home. And I have to pick the best food choices most of the time. And I have to communicate a lot more with my kidney care team. So my goal is always to get my levels as close to normal as I can and maintain that kidney function as long as possible. So just nearing the end here, I just want to remind people again, use your resources and make sure they're credible. Your dietitian, your nephrologist, your doctor, specialists, if you have other ailments and whatnot, and specialists, just be really careful that sources are reliable, and that there's hope with any nutritional journey, whether it's 5 years ago or now or in the future. It's going to change, and so just have to know that and be okay with that, and actually thank nutrition and my kidney care team for helping keep my function stable for the past 7 years. It wasn't expected to be stable this long, and I have hope that it can be a lot longer. So yeah, dietary challenges have caused me to be more creative. It sucked at first, but I'm really more excited about food and about good food than I've ever been before. So it doesn't matter anymore to me where my disease came from. Sometimes I look back at what worked and what didn't, but I'm just trying to go forward now. A friend of mine from Nanaimo, his grandpa shared something with him. He said, "Look back, but don't stare." And I use that a lot, especially on this journey. So thanks for being part of it.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Again, your story is just so incredible, because you've been with kidney disease for some time. It's been your, unfriendly friend for a few years, and you've really just done an amazing job of navigating it. And that's what's real. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Yes, success is sweet, but so is resilience, and being able to come back and see how you can regain some of that control. And grief is a huge component in all of this. And so I think we're all grieving in different ways these days. So I really value and honor your story. I also think it's really sad when people talk about weight and girth when you have so many health conditions you're trying to balance. It's not really a focus when you meet with a dietitian. We don't sit down with you and tell you how much weight to lose and things like that. We really want to be a champion of eating a variety of food and achieving your best health, best version of yourself. So speaking of diabetes, which you alluded to, Tamara, a little bit in terms of you want to be careful with some sugar sources, especially when you're on the vegan diet. This is something, 2/3 of our patients in the kidney clinic are living with right now. And what I want to say is, yes, you may have diabetes or heart disease and chronic kidney disease combined together. You don't have to follow 3 different diets for that. Please let a dietitian, kind of sit down with you, go through the things you enjoy eating and the foods that matter to you, because we can help you to bring it all together so you can follow one diet that's easy for you and streamlined. If you walk away with any sort of alignment today, it's that healthy plate image at the bottom of the screen, that you want your plate to be mostly colorful and mostly vegetables and fruit, and you want to leave some room for whole grains and protein as well. It's really important to have that balance. Tamara and Dawn both alluded to how activity was not only helpful to them to manage their, parameters, whether it was lab values or overall health, was also really good for their emotional well-being. So depending on what's possible for you, staying active is an important component of blood sugar control. If you have good blood sugar control, and you're the best person to know that because you can check your blood sugars on a day-to-day basis, you can actually protect your kidney health for much longer. And making sure you understand your diabetes medications and how to take them is also really, really important. So if you have questions about that, please do talk with your kidney care team. Tamara, thank you so much for talking about potassium. Potassium is such a complicated matter. As you mentioned, Tamara, it's not just about what's on the label anymore. It's really about what potassium is doing in the body. The more we learn about nutrition, the more we understand that potassium rises for a number of factors and a number of reasons, and the majority of them aren't dietary. Having said that, there are certain foods that contain additives, and I'll go into that are going to raise your potassium more quickly. A lot of the times patients come for a visit and they say, my doctor or my provider told me never to eat a banana again, but my potassium's still high. And so we go into some of these questions, and I hope after today, if you've had a high potassium, you might ask yourself these questions too, so that you can help troubleshoot why your potassium could be high. Could be because you have high blood sugars, because high blood sugars and high potassium kind of go hand in hand. If you're constipated, potassium can also go up because you don't have a good way of removing potassium from your body if your kidneys can't filter as well. Some medications that you need to help control your other health conditions raise your potassium. So understanding what those medications are and having a conversation about with your doctor about that is really important. Diarrhea, you lose a lot of fluid, you lose a lot of electrolytes. Potassium can go up or down with diarrhea. Dehydration, if you're not drinking enough fluids, you can have a high potassium level, and that's what hyperkalemia means. And also blood losses. Say someone's had surgery or you've just been in the hospital, it's not really the best time to worry about your potassium levels because your health has changed. So sometimes it's not really appropriate to avoid fruits and vegetables. So consider asking yourself, if you do, get a call from a dietitian, or if your blood work shows a really high potassium, what did I do about 2 days before I got that blood result? Was I at a restaurant? Was I at a gathering where I ate something I normally don't have? Did I eat more of something like a pasta with red sauce or pizza, or did I drink juice if I had a low blood sugar? Was it orange juice that I used to treat a low blood sugar? Did I have a soup? Did I use more sauces? Anything processed, like processed meat, anything that is in a package, think of that first. And then ask yourself, did I have more avocado than I should, right? Because I would rather you enjoy your avocado, have room for the foods that are wholesome, and maybe, we can negotiate on some of the processed or prepared foods. The next thing that I want to talk about is phosphate, and I'll bring it all together with potassium again, but people confuse potassium and phosphate quite often. They come from the same foods, but they have very sort of different purposes. Potassium is more really to regulate your heart, and the phosphate is more for your bone health. But what we're realizing as well is if people have very high levels of phosphate over a long period of time, their heart health is also compromised. So basically, if we have someone here with kidney function that's lower, what's going to happen is something called parathyroid hormone. Those levels are going to go up because your kidneys aren't working as well, and the hormones signal to each other. If the parathyroid hormone levels go up, your phosphate in your blood goes up and your calcium goes down. That's what's going to weaken your bones over time. So some of you might need a vitamin D or a calcium supplement. But most importantly, what you need first is a lower phosphate diet. And the lower phosphate diet is similar to the low potassium diet because you have two forms. You have the form that's in processed foods. It's a chemical. It gets absorbed very quickly in your body. And then you've got all these beautiful natural foods like tomatoes, like canned beans, like canned fish that also have potassium and phosphate. So start with your synthetic forms first and look at additives. Check the labels, as both of our partners here have mentioned so nicely. You know, take your time to read the ingredients. Potassium is also a salt substitute. So Tamara spoke to this as well. There'll be labels that say no salt, you know, they'll have all these claims, but if you turn the label around and look at the ingredients, they might either have sodium or potassium as an additive. So check that out. It comes up in very interesting foods like jarred pickles, which you would never think about. If you wanted to, you could include natural sources of potassium and phosphate regularly in your meals. So if you're eliminating any of these foods, nuts and seeds, legumes, lentils, beans, dairy products, fruits and vegetables, it's important that you talk with your dietitian because there is room to include these foods. In fact, it's really important that you do for overall nutritional balance. So as I mentioned, there are products that are labeled as low sodium, but they're going to have additives that are high in potassium and phosphate. So some of these products are listed here, and you just have to be careful and read the label on the back. So not all canned tomatoes are created equal. Not all black beans are created equal. Unfortunately, you have to read the label. In their natural form, if it's just plain canned beans, you can use them. Just give them a good rinse. They're actually processed, so they'll be lower in potassium and phosphate already. Same with the tuna. If you rinse off the tuna, you rinse off the salt, you can go ahead and use that. And even some canned vegetables and fruit are acceptable to use. You just have to check the labels. So here's the image of the beautiful variety that you can have. And, you know, it also maybe answers the question, is there a kidney diet? And I don't believe there is a kidney diet. This is the diet that you would see in Healthy Heart. You could have if you were on certain medications like warfarin. You know, you might have to make a few adjustments, but overall, you can include the majority of these foods in your diet, and they're essential for you to have good hair quality, good skin, like all those things that, you know, the signs that Tamara and Dawn were mentioning, you know, these are important elements, and they come in everyday foods. So next is achieving that stability, right? You might be a new diagnosis, and now you're kind of moving through, time is passing, and you're understanding better how to manage things, but you want to get to that point where you feel comfortable with the stability of your kidney disease, kind of where Tamara is at. And so we know that kidney disease is progressing, but we need to make sure that we're stable. So we need to compare ourselves to ourselves. When we look at lab results, it's not comparing yourself to normal kidney function, it's comparing yourself to the last 3 or 4 results that you had. And if you have minor fluctuations, not to panic. If your GFR drops a few points, it may not be a cause for panic, but you can certainly call your dietitian and ask, you know, my GFR dropped a few points. Can we go through my labs? Keeping your diabetes control as good as possible is so important. And if you know someone who has diabetes, or if you have diabetes, being connected to a diabetes center or somebody that manages your diabetes, where the dietitian might also be involved, will be helpful. We at the Kidney Clinic can also help you with that. Make sure your appetite, weight, and muscle mass, they're all stable. And I'll talk a little bit about protein in a moment. And that your activity levels are at a point where you can continue to be independent as much as possible. So I had some questions in the chat about protein and nutritional supplements, and just generally how much is too much and what should I be doing there. Protein's a really complicated matter in kidney disease, and everyone's going to be very different. Generally, when you have a new diagnosis, we do recommend that you restrict your protein intake. However, some of us might need more protein if we've lost muscle mass, if we've had a hospitalization. And then if you're gearing up for any kind of surgery, it's really good to check in with the dietitian about your protein status as well, and just make sure that you're ready for your surgery. Over time, living with any chronic disease where inflammation is present and you're on medications, or you have hormonal changes as a result of the chronic condition, you're going to have muscle loss. And it's going to be really, really important to try to keep that muscle mass up. And it will be harder to do for people who have chronic health issues. And so this could lead to protein energy wasting. Whenever I call somebody on the phone, a patient, now I can't see you unless I see you on Zoom, but if you're not on Zoom, I can't see you. I will ask you if you've lost weight or muscle mass. It's a really important question. And that's why the weight is not really that important. If you've lost weight, it can actually be a bad thing for you. It can be muscle loss for you. So if you keep your weight and you're feeling strong, that's the most important predictor for your outcomes and your health. The protein needs for you will be very individual, and the dietitian can work with you on that. Someone who's lost muscle mass will need more as compared to someone who's trying to maintain their weight and their muscle mass. It's important to distribute the protein across meals and just really limit to a deck of cards with the meats at one meal if you can. Sometimes it's really good to choose plant-based options like beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds, and choose leaner cuts of animal meats, fish, egg whites. All these are great options. If you do need a nutritional supplement because you've lost weight, this will be prescribed to you by your dietitian. And we're very fortunate in BC to have coverage for patients who need supplements, so you don't have to pay for it with a dietitian's prescription. I really wanted to touch on gut health. Gut health is going to be a seminar onto itself. If you're interested, please put that in the chat if you want to have a session on that. I think it would be great to explore this more. This is a new field of research, and there's a lot of interest because we know now that the gut is basically a portal into our health and into our immune system. And we can change our outcomes just by changing the gut microbiome, or the bacteria that live in our gut. Having kidney disease, again, weakens the gut. And so I have quite a few patients that have digestive health issues, and I work really closely with this group of people. It's very important to choose high fiber foods, whole grains, beans, legumes, and follow a dietary pattern that might be like the DASH or the Mediterranean diet, if that helps you. But it's really about a way of eating, because the gut likes to have combinations of different things going on. And natural probiotics are really an important part of that. So probiotic yogurt or kefir is a great option, as are the fermented products that Tamara was mentioning. Be careful with some of the kimchi and other fermented foods that are bought prepared. They may be higher in salt. So the fact that Tamara makes her own is amazing, and it's very easy to do at home. So if you want a recipe, talk to your dietitian. So here is just an image of the gut in chronic kidney disease, okay? On the left-hand side, you can see that the gut junctions, or the gaps between the cells, are broken up a little bit so bacteria can get through, and that can make us sick. So in order to tighten those up, we really need to focus on a wholesome diet that has whole grains. Ground flax is another really nice supplement that I use therapeutically, and that really helps with kind of revitalizing the gut, as well as the probiotic foods that I mentioned. Some of my patients take probiotic supplements, but please talk to your kidney care team before starting something like that. It's not appropriate for everyone. And so, you know, when you look at your nutrition and you kind of look at areas where you can fit in more fruits and vegetables, that certainly really helps. So you can appreciate the potassium argument a bit better now that we really need that room for fruits and vegetables. So how do you bring it all together? I hope, you know, our stories and some of the evidence that I've provided here can allow you to think about goals as you move forward, goals can be small. It's small steps that really, really matter that you can stick with over time. Is it maybe to add more fruit at a snack? Is it maybe to test your blood sugars, to test your blood pressure on a daily basis, to try a new recipe, to ask someone to help you put a meal together, or to reach out to your healthcare team or health professional for guidance. We have really good recipes on the BC Renal website, the diet page, and we also work with the Kidney Community Kitchen, and I know Tamara partners a lot with the National Kidney Foundation as well. So we are involved in working on these matters on a national level so that we can help people access recipes and just kind of normalize the food experience. So again, to summarize, this is a blow up of the healthy plate. You don't always have to use measuring cups, especially if you're not at home. You can just kind of eyeball it. And I hope you will try that technique. Finally, what is joyful eating? You know, we're nourishing our kidneys, but where's the joy in all of this, especially during these dark times of COVID? Where can we find the tiny little glimmers of joy that bring us satisfaction, happiness, and contentment? Thinking about traditions that matter to us and allowing ourselves to have that moment where we set ourselves up on a beautiful table or make a meal that we inherited, you know, a recipe from generations before. And what's a positive environment? Do I like a bit of ambient music while I have a meal, just so it doesn't feel like I'm eating alone? Do I want to start a Zoom cookbook club? It's up to you. The world's your oyster. And in all of this, you know that you have a trusted source of nutrition information, your dietitian just waiting here to help support you when you need it. Thank you so much for your participation, and we really look forward to a panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much to all of you who presented. Danny, Dawn, and Tamara, just absolute fantastic job. The little chat box and question and answer blowing up with positive comments, which is fantastic. I could say even more than some previous sessions, you know, so fantastic job. Really, really appreciate it. There's a few questions, actually quite a few. Now, Danny, I know, has been very actively typing some answers in. I put a couple in as well. But I want to highlight maybe a couple of them just so the whole group sees them, and actually so it goes on the recording as well. I really like one of the questions that was here of someone saying that they're just newly referred into the kidney clinic, haven't yet met a dietitian yet, or maybe someone who's newly diagnosed hasn't yet met a dietitian yet. What's one or two kind of main things that somebody can work on before they even meet a dietitian? I know my answer, but maybe Daniel, I'll turn it over.
Yes, I was going to say, I know my answer too, but maybe I could defer even to Dawn and Tamara because they've been in that boat firsthand, and I can supplement if there's any additional thoughts.
Good though.
You want to go ahead, Tamara?
No, I want you to go ahead.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, the change in salt intake in hidden salts. And there's also hidden sugar in it too at the same time. You don't realize it. You don't actually taste saltiness. One of the things I've noticed and I tried was after lowering my salt intake from all these sauces, I just decided, okay, have a taste of one. I just took a teaspoon and just ate it. And at that point, it was so salty. You build up a tolerance to, you might say, how you register the salt. And the sugar in there is the sugar is a little more obvious. But again, take a half a teaspoon of sugar and, you know, you gag, or at least I did. So the thing you can do is to cut salt intake. And that really does mean, what are you doing? Are you using a salt cellar? Okay, well, that one is really easy. But it is processed foods, is clearly they're full of it, and you don't notice it. So there are ways by reading labels and be aware that any processed food you're doing it. If you are eating fast food, McDonald's, whatever, you really do have to just stop going, I think. except maybe on your birthday once a year or something. But, you know, bring a cake with you. But no, you got to really, that's what you can do if you do that. Even if you're only doing it occasionally, you really should stop. As for the phosphorus, well, that just scares you. It looks like every vegetable you've been eating is just stuffed. And so I lost about 8% of my body weight in about 3 weeks at the very beginning because I was just scared of the food. Mm-hmm. Don't be scared of the food, be scared of the salt. Eat fresh food. I mean, people say that a lot, but you know, if you're used to sauces, the vegetables now seem like, oh, now I know why I use sauces. But if you cut them out for a while, sometimes it's like a couple of weeks later and you've had almost no salt and maybe just a bit of vinegar, a bit of heat, some tarragon. And the vegetables suddenly are not, you know, tasteless. They have a subtler taste than salt and sugar. They just do. So yeah, salt. If there's one thing, cut the salt.
Exactly what I would have said. That is the one thing.
Okay, well, I don't get an honorary MD for that, I'm sure.
No, it's yeah, absolutely, and that's a big thing.
And that's the easiest thing, and that's something to continue.
Yeah,
and that's what I am continuing. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say, which I didn't say, which is part of the salt, is as you change over, my attitude and other attitude is the total. Tamara gave her totality of change, which was, you know, in a very different direction than mine, but it seemed the impulse was the same. And for mine was, you might as well stop eating almost, you know, as little as possible. But they're all extreme versions and none of them really work. So just cutting salt from processed foods or junk food.
Yeah, it's the processed stuff for sure. Okay, yeah, just in the interest of time, I'll take maybe just a couple of the big ones. Otherwise, Danny's been addressing a lot of these questions. I'll also just say there was a few questions about individual protein intake. That was a big question, and rightly so. It's a common one people have. I agree. The best thing actually is to discuss that with your own dietitian because there are a lot of factors that go into that. So we can't really give a one size fits all recommendation here. So take that one over to your own dietitians there. But one of the other big ones that's come up over and over again that I will bring up is there's a couple of really common diets that people are talking about. You kind of alluded on this a little bit, but there's some specific questions about keto diets and intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
And
thank you
just give a general 2 cents about that.
That's great. I'm so glad we picked this question because I thank the participants for asking it. It does happen a lot that actually doctors, family doctors, are working with patients on starting intermittent fasting and keto diets. I would say that by and large, when I see intermittent fasting, there are 2 problems that happen. People do get dehydrated, so their kidney function does drop, and they eat more protein to offset to create that keto environment or aim to create it. And that also can put a stress on the kidneys. I noticed that when people stop intermittent fasting and their keto diet, the weight comes back. And so I do ask patients if they are agreeable and, give consent to me to sort of give my opinion on it. And we go through it, and I really focus on their blood work. I really focus on specifically what that diet looks like. And when we tease it out, we actually see that it isn't really strict intermittent fasting and it isn't really keto. And as long as it's kind of, you want to call it what you want to call it, it by definition, if it isn't that diet, you should probably be okay. But I don't think this is a matter where you would take the driver's seat given the kidney disease component. I think you would really need a team approach and maybe just some conversations with the dietitian and the primary care provider or whoever's prescribed you that diet. The evidence scientifically for intermittent fasting and keto is not strong in kidney disease. And for weight loss, it's also not strong. So at this time, it's not something that's indicated, I guess. But I don't want to say that we don't value and respect people's wishes to do things. We just want them to be safe.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer, Danny. And I'll also maybe pipe in, because some of the questions are around polycystic disease, which happens to be one of my other areas of expertise, because people would have seen there are some trial evidence around this. There's a big difference between somebody who's kind of early on in a process and somebody who's got lower kidney function. They're totally different groups of people. And, you know, Danny speaking, and I agree, from the kidney clinic side of things, where usually we see people maybe as they've progressed a little bit, and they're totally different. So that's to say that, you know, a good diet and a healthy diet, and a perfectly acceptable diet for somebody who's got normal kidney function versus somebody who's got lower kidney function could be two totally different things. And that's where you got to really be careful about what you apply to what. This question comes up almost every day, so I'm glad you answered.
And I like it because
it's
prescriptive. These diets are very prescriptive, and I just don't think that a prescriptive diet is individualized. So we're just kind of clashing worlds, and I want to take that prescriptive diet and make it more individualized to you. And yes, if you have polycystic kidney disease, it adds another layer where there are certain things that you really have to consider. And so I think it's really important to have a two-way conversation that's probably ongoing. It's not one visit that's going to help with that. You need probably several visits.
Yeah. Perfect. So, I mean, in the interest of time, I mean, so many great questions, and I'm glad that Danny, you're able to get to a lot of them in the chat there, which is great, or in the Q&A box. But in the interest of time, I think we'll kind of close it there. Again, I want to encourage everybody to go back and bring these to your team. This was the whole goal here, was to give you food for thought, you know, no pun intended, to go back and discuss with your own team about, and really have a more detailed one-on-one conversation about you individually and your needs. That's our goal here. The couple little plugs that I'll make is just to remind everybody, when we're done here, you'll get a link for an evaluation. We'd love to hear it. We'd love the feedback to improve these sessions in the future. There are going to be upcoming sessions. Our next one will be in March, and about a dialysis treatment modality. And again, just another plug to go on there, and you can see the whole calendar and subscribe as they come. And when you go on there, our last little plug is that you'll see there are all kinds of other opportunities to be involved, just like you heard Tamara at the beginning talk about being one of our patient partners, who I think it's been a couple of years now. I can't even remember, but it's been a couple of years anyway. So I've had the pleasure of working with Tamara, and there's opportunities like that online as well. Otherwise, to close, I want to take a last chance to really, really thank our amazing group here. This is a fantastic presentation. Danny and Dawn and Tamara, just thanks so much for sharing all of your expertise and lived experience with this. Really fantastic job. And I also want to thank our organizers, Janet and Alexis, our technical wizard, who behind the scenes has been making this all happen. So thanks again for pulling this off. And thanks all of you for attending. Hopefully we'll see you again next time around. And do remember, if you want to take another look at this session, it'll be right up there online within a week or two. So take a look there. Otherwise, thanks for your time this Friday afternoon.
Thank you.